and welcome to episode 45 of my Doll's House Diary. Now in today's episode I want to go up into the attic craft room and make a start on some of the little bits and pieces to fill the room. So let's get started. So I just want to start by showing you the craft room as it is now. So I haven't really added any accessories other than the doll's house, which I made some years ago actually. The pin board up there, and then the little sellotape dispenser, an extra roll of tape. Now you'll find tutorials for the pin board and the little sellotape dispenser here on the channel. And the pin board one I think is a part of my Craft Shed playlist. So you should find that in there, but I can't remember which episode number it is now, I'm afraid. But just scroll through those and you'll find the title and it'll probably say pin board in it. So we've got all of this lovely space to fill, all these shelves, and then lots of surfaces as well. So we've got lots of little bits and pieces to make. There is one other piece of furniture that I need to add to this room, and that is a little chair. Now again, I'm going to make another of these, which I made for the Craft Shed. So it was a little fold-up chair that I based on one that I actually had, but this doesn't fold up, this is actually fixed, just because it makes it easier to build. And this is the one out of my Craft Shed, so I'm just going to pop that there to see how that will look. I quite like that, and I think I'll have it in white, and then we can have a nice little throw and cushion on there as well, but to suit the colouring of this room. But I'm not going to do that today. I've already done a tutorial for that, so I'll probably just get that made off camera. And again, you can find the tutorial for that in that Craft Shed playlist. So I'm not sure at the moment where I'm going to start, but let's head back into the craft room. So I've got my Craft Shed here, which I'm going to use as inspiration for the craft room. And I'm going to be remaking lots of these bits. And I think somewhere on my computer I've still got some of the PDFs that I saved for some of the packets and the little labels that I used for the tins and everything. So I'll find out all of those, and that makes it a lot easier. But I really enjoyed making all the little bits for this shed. I want to do something fairly similar. I'll put the little chair back in. Okay, so we've got lots of bits and pieces to make, so let's get started. So I've brought in here 4 of the units from the craft room. So the only one I haven't brought in is that little step unit that goes at the side of the door, but we'll start with these. And I've also got here a selection of my papers, and this one I got in a pack of scrapbooking paper, but I really like that, and I'm thinking these sort of little tag ones here, if you cut the ends off so that you've just got a straight, sorry, on the wrong one there, if you sort of cut these angled ends off, and then you've got like a little pre-made book cover, and there's some really pretty patterns on there as well, so I think they'll be quite good to use. I'm going for the sort of pinks and blues that I've got in my own craft room, because I've used a copy of my paper, so my bird paper, I've used that on the walls in 1/12 scale, so we'll stick with the same sort of colour scheme. There are some nice sort of pink ones on there, that one as well, got some nice little glittery ones on there as well. I've got a pink stripe there, which is just plain on the other side, which I thought would be really nice to make some magazine files. That one as well, that's sort of like an embellished one as well. Another pinky one there with a plain backing. I've also then just brought over a piece of aluminium foil. Now this is thicker than, you know, sort of tin foil, the one that you would use for baking and roasting, but I'm not sure of the gauge names, but if I just sort of fold that you can sort of get an idea of the thickness there, so slightly thicker than a normal foil. And then I've also got here my manila card, and I used that for sort of some of the little cardboard delivery boxes and things in there. And in that corner, which I want to sort of remake, I've got a box with the Gorilla Glue logo on the end that I've used to stand some wood in. I can't quite get my tripod to squish down. There, that's a better view of it. And then I've put some little pieces of wood in there, so I want to make another one of those. And perhaps we'll be able to sort of stand that on one of those larger openings there, just with some pieces of wood to that height standing in. So that's why it's a good idea to have the units that you're actually going to dress with you while you're making all the bits and pieces, because then you can make them to your own sort of custom size. Okay, so let's make a start on some of these magazine files. So just in case you're not sure what a magazine file is, it's just one of these storage boxes. And I have this one sitting on my desk all the time, and I actually keep my own books in there. And that just slides nicely in there. Now I've made some here, and I'm going to refilm the sort of tutorial part just because I think I made it a little bit too long-winded. So I'm going to simplify it a little bit, but just to show you the ones then that I've made, and I'm going to pop those on there, get a better view of them. And then a little while ago, a lovely lady sent me 12th scale copies of my books that she'd made, and it was actually before the 5th book came out, before the Shed book came out, so that's the first 4 in there, and she's laminated them and everything, and they look really nice in there, so they'll go in there. I think that looks good. And then I'll find out some copies of some Doll's House magazines and we'll scale those down as well. And then we can put some of those in the other ones. But I'm going to make another one now just to show you how to sort of measure up for the template. Okay, so you want to start off by cutting a piece of your card or paper which measures 52mm by 30mm, and that is 2 1/16 of an inch by 1 3/16 of an inch. Now this is actually going to be the front part, so do your pencil marks on the bit that you want on the inside, and I'm just saying that just in case you're using a card or paper that's patterned on both sides. So we're going to begin by making pencil marks across the top edge of the piece, so the widest edge. And I'll start by giving you the measurements in millimetres, and then I'll give you them in inches. So the first pencil mark should be 6mm, 19mm, 24mm, 37mm, 43 and 48mm. So just do a little mark along the top edge there, and in inches that is 1/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, 15/16 of an inch, 1 7/16, 1 11/16, and 1 7/8. And that's why it's a really good idea to make up your own template. I'm sort of working from this, which I keep for making these little magazine files. So it might be a good idea as we're going along if you make up your own little template, and then if you ever want to make them again or make more than one now, it's a lot easier to do because you can just copy down all of your measurements then. Then come down to the bottom edge, and we're going to do a repeat of some of those measurements but not all of them. So this time the first one will be, let's get that lined up there, again from the left hand edge, 19mm, 24mm, and then we miss that one, and then 43mm and 48mm. So this time it's the 3/4 of an inch, 15/16 of an inch, 1 11/16, and 1 7/8. Let me just show you that there. So the only ones we're not doing are these, which are the sort of top part of our angled part of the file. So we're now going to join up the lines where we've done a pencil mark top and bottom. And I know this seems a lot of sort of preparation for such a simple little project, and that's sort of why I'm redoing it, because I think I did it too long-winded last time. I sort of did all the measurements separately and then did the folding and things like that, so I'm simplifying it even though it doesn't seem so. Okay, so this central sort of little section here now is the front of the magazine file, so we need to make a pencil mark for where we want to cut away, and we're going to do that 12mm or ½ an inch from that bottom edge. So just do that on that inside of that little central section, like that. You can join that up, so we do need to cut away in a moment. And then from the edge of that, we're going to go up to those little pencil lines that we haven't joined up, and that's the angled part of our file, or our magazine file. So again, place your pencil so that you'll go into the very edges of those marks. Come across like that, and then that other side as well. I'm sorry if it's not the best angle, but it's very difficult to do this and have the camera extremely close, because then I have to sort of look through it or over it. So then you'll have a piece like that. We're now going to do a little pencil mark 4mm up from that bottom edge, and that's 5/32 of an inch. So 4mm, and do that at both edges, both sides. Again, join that up. Like that. And you'll be pleased to know that's all our pencil marks now. So we are now going to make some cuts. Now you can do this with your craft knife if you like, but just be aware that after you've been working with card or paper, you'll need to then change your blade before going back to wood. I'm just going to use my scissors actually, even though they're not too giant for this. But just make a start by cutting along those angled lines. That one as well. And then you want to cut across that front central section there. Like that, and remove that part. Still attached there. You then want to cut along each of these little lines along this sort of bottom flap, which is going to make the bottom of the magazine file, the bottom of the box, and there as well. And then cut away that little square at the corner. Not only are my scissors too big, but they're going blunt as well. And then on this very little end flap, just cut at an angle at the top and bottom. And that just makes it easier to fold. And we're now going to fold along each of those lines. And I like to use a rule to do that, just because you get a sharper line. So just place your your rule along each of those pencil lines that we've drawn, and just sort of fold it up like that, and you can crease it in. That way your box will remain square. If you just try and do that by hand, then it can go a little bit off kilter and it'll be a little bit wonky once you glue it together. Along there as well. And I hope I still haven't made this too complicated. For such a simple little project, this has taken me quite a long time to record. And I sort of started a moment ago and I'd missed out one measurement, and I started again and then somebody knocked at the door. So this is about my 5th attempt, I think. Okay, so fold up the little flaps as well. And now you can sort of see how this is all going to go together. We've got the bottom flaps there. Fold it in at the back, and then we're going to fold that angled flap in as well. And there is our magazine file. It's absolutely pouring with rain out there now. So let me get some glue on my card. So just begin by putting a bit of glue on that back angled flap. And obviously this time on the pattern part. And then fold out those bottom flaps, and then we'll begin by attaching it like that first. And make sure that it's sort of flush at the top there, so you've got a nice straight edge. and that you've got that straight line along the back as well, otherwise again it will sort of stand a bit wonky on your desk. You then want to fold in those little flaps at the front and back. Put glue on one of the longer flaps and fold that down. And I'll put a bit of strip wood inside in a moment, which will sort of square it all off and glue it all down. And a bit of glue on that final flap. Press that down as well. Sit it down onto your desk like that, and then bring in a piece of strip, and I've got a piece of 5mm here which will just fit inside, and press it all down, and you can square that back piece up as well if you need to. Make sure that that's nice and flush, all sticking. This way you can give it a good press as well. And that can now be left to dry. So I'm just going to start now dressing the main work desk, and I've printed off here a cutting mat, and I've just cut a border around it because what I want to do is stick it to a piece of card and then cut them out together. And I just like to attach it to a piece of card because it gives it that sort of heavier look. And then when you sort of put it into place on your desk or wherever you're having it, it doesn't look just like a piece of paper stuck there. So I always advise sticking things to a piece of card first. So let me stick that down, and then whilst that's drying we can move on to something else. And just by leaving a border like this and then cutting the two pieces out together, you're going to get a more accurate sizing. If you cut them separate, you'll see the card around the edge. Just realised I've got the camera a little bit too high there. So flatten it all out like that. I'm now going to leave that to dry, and then we can cut that out and put it into place. Okay, so that's dry now, so I'm going to cut that out. And don't forget just to angle around your corners because they would be rounded. And that just gives it that sort of heavier look. If you see from the side there, you can actually see the grey card at the side, which you would see on a real cutting mat. If I just bring you down like that. I've got two here, but if you look at the top one there, you can see that bit underneath. So I'm going to stick that into place now. I'm going to have that just there. And then we can start building up some bits and pieces around it. So I've printed off a Gorilla wood glue label here, and I've got a piece of dowel which is 5mm, which fits the label, and this is obviously scaled to the height just of the label, not the bottle. So I'm actually going to start by just shaping the top of this. So I'm just going to use a piece of 180 grade sandpaper and just sort of round over the top edge. Now on the actual bottles they've sort of got shoulders, so it goes in at an angle each side, but it's easier to round it, so I'm just going to do that. So keep going until you're happy that you've got a nice sort of rounded in top part there, and then just make sure you've got a flat top because we're going to stick a little lid on, and then the angled sort of little spout bit. So just hold it upright and go along your sandpaper flat on your work surface. Just do that a couple of times. And I'm now going to give this a coat of white paint before I cut it to length, and it's just easier to do that because then you've got something to hold onto while you're painting the top part. So I've got my piece of rounded dowel drying there, and I've also done a bit of white paint on the tip of a cocktail stick, and I'll be using the very tip of that for the lid of the glue. And what I'm doing now is just cutting some pieces of the aluminium to make some steel rules. So these should be, for a 12-inch rule, these should be 27mm long because you have a little bit extra after the 12 inches, which we're going to round off and put a little hole in. And then I've also just cut a really small one here for a 6-inch rule, and they should be about 15mm long and just a millimetre wide. And we're going to do the same thing with that. So let me just move the camera down a little bit and we'll put some markings on those. So round off the end of each of the rules, just using your scissors, and then use a scribe just to do a little hole in there. And usually find they have a hole at the end there because they can obviously be hung when they're stored. Same with that one. Do one in there as well. And then using your craft knife, just do some little lines on there. And you don't have to measure these out. Want to do like some little markings along there. Do that on each of them. Like that. And then using a small paintbrush, use some black paint. Have a piece of kitchen towel handy. I'm just going to turn that round so I can hold on to the end with the little hole in it. And just paint over it like that. Just go along like that. Put that there and then wipe it off again. And then your black paint will actually stick into the little markings that you've done. And it's only very subtle, but we only want it to be. You don't want it to look like heavy black lines. The scale is so small that you would only sort of see the markings if you were close up. And as you're putting those little markings in, they might curl up, or the aluminium might curl up, so just sort of run it between your fingers to straighten it out again. I'll hold these up in a moment and show you a little bit closer. One as well. So it's only very subtle, but you can see that there are markings on there. So I've done 3 so that I can have one on the desk, on like a working area, and then we'll do a little pot and we'll have some in there. So my paint has now dried on the dowel, so I'm going to stick the Gorilla Glue label onto that. I've cut it to 16mm high, and that's for the large glue bottle that I always have on my desk, but just measure the one that you're using and divide that by 12 if you want to do a smaller bottle or a larger one. Stick that around there, leaving a bit of a border at the top and bottom. And I'll link to that video at the end where I did all of the little paints and wood dyes and everything for the shed, so that you can have a look at that. So to do the sort of little brown bit around the top, again I'm using a cocktail stick. These are also really good for lids and little pointed tops and things. And I'm actually going to colour it using a coloured pencil. When you're only doing sort of really little bits like this, it's easier to use coloured pencils than getting all the paints out. And if you've got a sort of pack of these coloured pencils, you'll normally find you've got a really good range of colours in them. And again, I'm doing sort of slightly more than I'm going to need, and then I can just cut it to size. Make sure you do that top bit as well. So I only want this to be 1.5 millimeters high. So you want to hold on to the bit that you want to keep, otherwise it will just sort of fly off and you'll never see it again. And then twist it beneath your craft knife, and that just helps to cut through. Keep going, you will get there in the end. I've just been cutting the aluminium sheet with this knife, so I should have really changed the blade. That's why it was taking a little bit longer to get through. But there's my little top bit. I'm going to stick that on top of the glue bottle now. Might need tweezers for handling all these sort of smaller parts. get that the right way up first. Stick that on there. Make sure it's central. And then I want the other tip of this for that little lid bit where the glue actually comes out of. So again, I'm going to hold on to the bit I want to keep and twist along. Dot a tiny little bit of glue on there. Put that into place. There's our little bottle of Gorilla Wood glue. I've got some grey card here as well, not too thick, and I want to make now a roll of masking tape. So I've cut a strip here that is just 2mm wide, and that's right for the centre of a masking tape roll. And then you want to fold it into a circle that is about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch round. And an easy way of doing that is actually to wrap it around a pencil. So get the size that you need, and then you can pop a bit of glue on. Like that. Press those together. You can use your tweezers again for that and just get in there and give them a press. So to cover the roll, put a piece of masking tape on your desk and make little 2mm marks at each end, and then cut that using your craft knife. You can then peel those up and actually just tape them around the roll. Put your fingers at either side like that to keep it straight, to keep it on the roll sort of thing. And then you can start on another piece. And just keep going until you've got a decent sized roll. You can just do a couple of pieces if you like. You might have used most of it. Like that. And then I've also done a smaller blue roll there as well. And with that one, do your middle so it's about 3mm in diameter. I'm now going to make a roll of kitchen paper, and I always have a roll in my craft room. And to do this, I've used that same grey card again. This is 20mm high, so just over 3/4 of an inch, and you want a diameter of about 4mm. And then for the actual kitchen towel, use tissue rather than kitchen towel, because otherwise it will look a little bit too chunky, a bit too thick. So cut your tissue into strips of 20mm high, so the same as your roll, and then separate the layers. And that way you'll get a more to scale sort of look. And then just put a bit of glue at the start of your roll like that. And again, just feed it around. And these can go up to about 10mm in diameter for a full roll. So you can put on as much or as little as you like. Again, just have your fingers there at the top and bottom to keep the sort of paper level. If you rip it off like that, just glue it down and then start again. And I need a tiny little bit of glue because obviously it's so thin. Glue on my card's drying up a bit. So just glue that down and then start again. I always like to finish the roll off just with a little sort of folded over flap at the top there. And I'm actually going to start gluing some of these things down now, just because everything keeps falling off every time I move the desk. So I've glued the little book stand into place, the little book rack rather. I'll put the kitchen towel next to it. Like that. Oops. We'll have the glue over here, and then I'm going to go and get a little cup, and we'll have that as a holder for the rulers and some paintbrushes and things like that. So actually I won't glue the glue into place yet, and I'll see how much room that little cup takes up. But then I actually want to dress the cutting mat here with some bits of cut wood ready to build a piece of furniture. So I've got the little mug out there, but I'm not sure I like it there, to be honest. I think I'll still use it in the craft room, but I might do a load of paintbrushes to put in it and have it somewhere else. I think in this little area, because the desk is white and everything's sort of quite pale, I need something with a little bit of colour in it. So I'm going to have a think about that. But I just wanted to show you as well the little scissors that I've got in there. I actually just took those out of my collection. I didn't make those. And I sell these in my Etsy shop, and I really like them because they're really sort of true to scale. But we could make a pair of those. I'm not going to do it today because we're already sort of running out of time, but I think it would be quite easy just to cut that basic shape from some of the aluminium and then just paint the handle part in black. I think we could do that. But for now I'm going to have a go at making another little pot to keep the rulers in, and the scissors and some other little bits that we'll make to go in it at a later date. And I'm going to get rid of that little mug for now. So I've made another of the little plastic desk tidies, and I made this using a drinking straw. So you just want to cut 6 different lengths, 2 smaller ones at the front there, and then just get progressively larger up to about 20 millimeters high. And I quite like these because you've got all the different sections that you can put different bits and pieces in. And I've actually just for the first time used my glue and glaze to stick these together. Now that's still drying, so you can still see a bit of the glue on there, but that will dry clear, and the glue and glaze has worked really well. Now I've done a tutorial for this, and you'll find that in that Craft Shed playlist, which I'll try to remember to link to at the end of this. And in that, what I actually do is stick the drinking straws into my Gorilla Wood glue to create a little sort of bottom on them, and then when the glue dries it just creates a little clear plastic bottom in there. But you actually don't need to do that. If you just want to make it like that so that your straws are all just straight through, once you've glued it into place you don't need any bottom in there because the bottom will be obviously the desk. So I'm going to do mine like that, so I'll stick that into place round about there. I think that looks quite nice there, and I prefer that just to the mug, but if you did just want to use a mug or any sort of little jar you've got, then you can do that, and I'll use that one later on, like I said, with some paintbrushes and things in. But for now I'm quite pleased with this. And I've also just cut, again from the 0.8, just some little pieces of wood, and I'm just pretending here that I'm making a little sink unit, so I've even drawn the lines on there, glued the first 2 pieces together, got some little legs there, just cut some sort of thin slithers of wood, and then a top, a bottom, and some little shelves. So you don't have to be that precise, you can just have some little bits of wood cut on the desk there. And now I want to do like a few little pieces of sandpaper, which I also always have sitting on my desk. So I've just added a couple of little bits of sandpaper there, and I used the green just to add a bit more colour into that area. And I haven't glued that or the tape into place yet because I want to add lots more to this desk, and I want to be happy that I've got the position right first before I go gluing anything else into place. But all of these little bits of wood are glued, and I'm happy with the layout there. One thing that I didn't make for the Craft Shed, and I always wished I had, was a little craft knife. So we'll have a go at that next time as well. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it here for today.
then I could get away and actually start editing this video, as much as I'd like to sit here and just carry on with this now. But what I want to do now is actually go and put this back into place in the craft room.
And there is the desk in place. And I'm really pleased with how that's looking. Even though we've only just scratched the surface in this video, I'm really pleased with how that's coming along. And I think it looks really nice how it sort of flows in then with the edge of the pin board. So we've got lots more space at the back there. We could maybe have a book propped open at the back, and obviously lots more bits that we can put here. Now in my miniature displays I do like to add lots of bits, even though in my own craft room I like to keep my working areas quite clear. But I just think it's so much more fun adding in lots of little bits and pieces and having it all sort of looking all jam-packed. But obviously you can add as much or as little as you want. And like I said earlier, I'm going to link to the Craft Shed playlist at the end of this, and I'll also maybe pick out one video to link to as well. So do take a look at those for inspiration, but also have a look around your own craft room or your own work area. And I think it's really nice to downsize items that you have in real life. I think that makes a really nice touch. But like I say, we've got lots more to do in this room, and I really want to get back to this quite quickly. So the next, at least one, probably 2 videos will come back up here and make lots more little bits and pieces. So that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.